Hi, I'm Danish and today we are going to overclock this thing. So this is a RTX 3060 Ti in a dual slot but a triple fan configuration, which is pretty hefty and solid amount of cooling in it with a pass-through in the back like all the 30 series this year, and a bit dusty because it has been in my system for quite a bit now, and I think I can push this guy a lot farther than the stock frequencies and stock curve is taken into account. So let's just get started into the performance upgrades that I have done to this, and all of these are completely software based, so I'm going to go through all the steps that I have gone through and all the tools that I've used to upgrade and push this card in terms of overclocking and performance that I can pull out of it. So step 1, download a suitable software to overclock your card. So you can use MSI Afterburner or Precision X1 if it suits you, or whichever UI you feel it's better for you. Number 2, have a monitoring tool to check your temps and loads of your thing. So MS Afterburner has this inbuilt, but also Open Hardware Monitor is also pretty helpful to do that. Number 3, have benchmarking tools in your system to check stability and your overclocking score. So I'm using Unigen Heaven and Time Spy from 3D Mark and also Firestrike from 3D Mark. So all three of these are free for you to download on yourself, as are the tools to overclock your software, and none of these tools will work on your laptop because those GPUs are locked from factory and cannot be overclocked. These can only be done with the desktop class GPUs. So anybody with a laptop thinking that they can overclock their GPU and gain more performance is not gonna happen. You are what you're stuck with. Where do I start? So starting off with the Heaven benchmark, I did a stock run which gave me a score of 7295. Okay, so how does the process of overclocking work? So you either have to have some sort of load running in the background which keeps your GPU at 100%, or do a test run of any of these benchmarks to see if they are stable or it gives you a score increase. So the second step is a pretty too tedious. So having Heaven running in the background at whatever settings you like, but pinning the GPU at 100% performance, and then you just start moving the sliders of your system. So the best thing to do is moving the power limit slider and temperature limit slider first, because those are just a sort of artificial limit to your system. So those will just give your GPU a bit higher core clock that it can jump to at a given temperature. So you are just increasing the temperature limit within reason as well, because the GPU should not overheat and kill itself. So these two are pretty non-harmful as long as your power supply can provide the power that it is asking. Then you will hit your power limit, and now you have two things to play with: the clock and memory clock. So memory clock can be overclocked pretty high and pretty safely to a pretty good margin. So I started out by pushing the memory clock to about by 15 increments, so plus 50, plus 100, plus 200. So it starts at 7000 megahertz in case of the 3060 Ti, and probably all the 30 series except the 3090, I guess, which has a higher clock. So pushing it slowly, I pushed it to 1000 megahertz up, it was stable. Pushed it to 1100, it was stable. I pushed it to 1200, it was stable. I pushed it to 1300 and it was still running. There was no artifacting in the Heaven benchmark, but the once I pushed it beyond 1300 megahertz, it started showing me artifacts and weird flickers. I still did a bit more. I pushed it to 1375 and I had a crash, so the system rebooted. So I know that is the hard limit of the memory clock, so I dialed it back to 1200. It was stable. Okay, now let's start pushing the core clock. So the core clock works in an increment of plus 15, after which it jumps up a core level. So start out with plus 15, stable, plus 30, stable, plus 60, stable, plus 90, stable, plus 120, stable. After this I started doing increments of 15 again, plus 135, stable, plus 150, stable, plus 165, stable, plus 180, stable, plus 195, stable, plus 210, stable. The moment I tried plus 225, I got a crash. Rebooted the system completely, tried plus 225, crash again. So that is the hard limit. Okay, brought it back to plus 210, stable. Ran a test, it didn't run. So Heaven ran, but Time Spy and Firestrike did not run at plus 210, plus 1300. So I know one of these is causing instability. So I dialed both of them back. I died plus 180 and 1200. It didn't run. And all of this time, Heaven was running at plus 1300 and plus 210, and it gave me a score of 7889 compared to the stock of 7295. So this is an 8% increase. But I'm guessing Heaven was not that hard of a hit to the GPU because it wasn't really giving me more scores about stability, and Time Spy and Firestrike got a bit more intensive, and it actually showed me where it would crash or it might crash again in your games as well. So I kept Time Spy as the benchmark of stability for myself, but down to 180 and 1100. Still Time Spy wouldn't run. Firestrike would run, but Time Spy would not run. So okay, I dialed back down the core, the memory frequency to 1000, 180 plus on the core and plus 1000 on the memory. It ran. Okay, cool. I did plus 1025 on memory. It ran. Cool. I did plus 1050 on the memory. It worked. Cool. I'm getting more and more progress here. Okay. Plus 1075. It worked. Cool. The moment I hit 1100, nothing. So I know that plus 1075 was the pretty stable in case of Time Spy, and I didn't have any glitches in either Rise of the Tomb Raider or CSGO, which were the two main games that I'm playing currently. I tried pushing the core clock after this from 180 to 210. Again, no running of Time Spy. So I understood that 180 is the best that I can do with Time Spy. So here are the scores that I have before and after for Time Spy and Firestrike, and also Heaven as well. So I already told you I got the max score I got from Heaven was 7889, which was plus 210 and plus 1300. But as it didn't work on the other scores, so I had to bring it down from that to plus 180 plus 1075. So I got a score of 7835 compared to the stock of 7295. So this is the steps I am taking over the XMP. So stock, XMP tests, and now the GPU. So I already know that I have an increment of about 1% from XMP. So here I got a performance score of about 7.4% over stock and 5.5% over XMP in Heaven. Now coming on to Time Spy, I got a stock score of 10749, an XMP score of 10934, and a plus 180 and plus 1075 on the memory, and I got a score of 11629. So I got an uplift of about 8% over stock and 6.3% over XMP for the overall score. And Firestrike as well had a similar trend where the stock was 24744, with XMP 25024, and with the plus 180 and the plus 1075 I got a score of 26275. So this is 6% over stock and 4.9% over the XMP profile. There was a big difference in the minimum frame rates, where you can see the performance is actually being assisted a lot to improve the baseline of all of these scores, and you can see this in Rise of the Tomb Raider, where the stock score was 127 average on the mountain, and the minimum was 65 and the maximum was 176. But I got an average of 129, which is a big jump, but the minimum score jumped up from 65 to 89, and the maximum score actually dropped from 176 to 162. And it was a pretty similar trend with the other two tests as well, with Syria and geothermal, where the average frequency increased a bit, but the minimum frame rates increased pretty drastically, especially in Syria, where it went from 32 to 66. That is more than 100% increase. And also in geothermal, where it went from 42 to 79. And the maximum either stayed the same or reduced, and it was the same in Syria with 147 and 149, and geothermal from 146 to 149. So you can see the steps increase, and the average increase was about 10% from taking an average of all three tests, but the minimum scores were really improved from increasing 200% in case of Syria and about 80% in terms of geothermal. So you can see that you are getting a tangible difference in the minimum frame rate, which is more important than your maximum frame rate that you're getting, because the minimum is the most jarring, and the lower it is, the worse the gaming experience is. So higher minimum FPS is better for gaming as well. So overall, I did have fun doing this, and sometimes it was an irritating experience because you had to do each and every uplift manually and just see if there are artifacts, if it's stable, if it's unstable, what limits am I hitting, it's either power limit or voltage limit or current limit or instability or not enough cooling, and I have a custom fan curve as well on the CPU and the GPU, which is I'm not going to let it hit anything around 80 degrees without having it completely ramped up to 100%. So I have maxed out the cooling in sacrificing noise, and it's a tempered glass panel, so it cuts out a lot, and I wear headphones a lot, so it's not a big deal for me. But getting a 10% uplift in Rise of the Tomb Raider and getting a 7 to 8% uplift in synthetic benchmarks just gives me a bit of joy, because I got to push that much out of this GPU and this system. And also I haven't yet gone to undervolting, which might unlock a bit more performance in terms of GPU clock that I can push. And also I haven't touched the CPU yet, and I haven't done any overclocking of the CPU as it's completely stock, but the cooling is pretty good here, so I am pretty psyched to do that as well. But it's going to be a pretty big gap between this video and that video, because I'm still learning how to do undervolting. Then I'll start learning how to do overclocking of the Ryzen 5000 series, because you can either do precision boost or you can manually give an offset and all of that stuff. It's pretty complicated, and I want to learn perfectly, and so I can explain it to all of you guys. So hopefully you can follow through the steps that I have done and get stable results and have a more performance from your system as well, and extract as much as you can, as safely as you can. So I guess that's it for this video. It was pretty fun to overclock this beast, and it's come more because of the cooling that has been slapped onto this GPU. And even though the PCB is so short, the cooler is so huge, nearly 1.5 times the length of the PCB. So I know the cooling can handle the performance and the thermal that I'm throwing towards it. So let's just hope it stays stable and I can push it a bit harder. So that's it for this video. It's a pretty long walkthrough where I've done a lot of visuals, and I want to do all of that thing soon and throw it into the system and show you how to do all of this manual overclocking soon, hopefully in a live stream in the future. So get subscribed to my channel and ring the bell icon to get notifications of all of my videos when I do that. Give this video a like if you liked it, comment down below if I missed anything, or if you have any doubts about GPU overclocking, and I'll try to answer you guys and help you out. And stay home, stay safe. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace.